Welcome to the Wisconsin Transition Improvement Grant Online Professional Development Module, Community Employment Connections, the Community Conversation. There are actually three interactive and proven ways to build relationships around employment for students, staff, and community businesses. The activities include an amazing race to employment, business tours, and community conversations. Think of these as the ABCs to community employment connections. They are fun and engaging events, and we would like to share some straightforward resources and information with you so you can put these into action for your district. Today, I'm going to spend time on the C of the ABCs, community conversations. We would like to provide the beginnings, 1, 2, 3, of planning for this event. So what is a community conversation? A community conversation is actually a gathering around a predetermined topic where stakeholders gather to invest in a topic and create action plans to move proactive work forward. It's exciting and full of action. Community conversations are a highly effective way to bring people together to talk about community issues. The concept of community conversations has become a tool to increase employment outcomes for individuals with disabilities for years. And through research, it has been proven to be an effective way to get results for youth with disabilities. So the purpose and objective of community conversations around employment is to bring schools, businesses, students, families, agencies in a fun setting together to talk and think about the topic of employing students with disabilities. The ideas generated and the follow-up made will connect the community in working together to increase employment opportunities for your students. Community conversations became an important tool of the Let's Get to Work grant for increasing employment for students with disabilities. They developed some guidance documents and detailed information after the Let's Get to Work school grant schools all had community conversations and had success in planning and in next steps. The guidance in their documents really spell out the benefits that the community conversation can have, how to invite participants to come and join you, how and what research and evidence is behind the outcomes, and what will be some takeaways that happen from a community conversation. You will find these resource documents in the Let's Get to Work guide under collaboration and community conversations. You can go to the Let's Get to Work website and go to the quick guide. Many who have planned community conversations say the documents on this website are their go-to resources. They're clear and helpful. Another great resource is launching inclusive efforts through community conversations. You will also find this on the Let's Get to Work site. This guide was developed by the Natural Supports Project at the Weissman Center. First thing to remember is when you start this planning, no matter what resource guide you're using, it takes a team to create these community conversations. Organize a small inclusive group of people to plan for this day. Include school staff and individuals from partner agencies and your community, from your local County Community on Transition, or CCOT. It will take many hands and many voices to launch an inclusive community conversation. The logistics and planning are well spelled out in these resources, but think about these. First of all, you really do determine the topic that your community would like to address, such as for these community conversations, it will be employment. Then decide the questions to pose to the participants based on that topic. Plan for the event and plan for it to be about 2 hours in length. Plan for where you're going to hold that in the community. Plan to create a very hospitable and very fun atmosphere. Develop a seating arrangement that gets attendees talking and is inclusive. Provide a meal and refreshments. Give a brief presentation and instructions of the event before it begins. This is a good place to include student panels and employment success stories. One of the most important parts of the planning is determining the questions, and here are some tips for consideration. Pose only 1 or 2 questions for the event. Ask questions that push people about what they can do to elicit change. Starting your questions with what and how helps facilitate that conversation about possibilities. Consider the difference between these 2 questions. How can we make employment more inclusive for all students? And why are there barriers to including youth with disabilities in employment in our community? Avoid questions that explore the value that may be under a topic and focus more on next steps by posing questions that tap into participants' personal experiences and connections. Make a list of several questions about examples. Make a list of several questions about employment in the community that are important to you and will resonate. Then pick 1 or 2 questions from the list that stand out because they could be answered by a broad range of the community members that would be at the community conversation. Write these questions in a way that encourages action and commitment. And again, both of the resources that we have mentioned go step by step and have even more examples for you to work from. One last thing, make this your own. No 2 districts or communities are the same, and no community conversation in 2 communities will be the same. The resources given here give you the foundations. If it meets the goals of your work to increase employer, community, and district connections, the work will be well worth your time. And finally, success is in the follow-up. Make this a specific part of your planning steps. Be sure to include what will be the next steps and decide who, how, where, and when you will follow up. I've talked a lot and given a lot of information. You know where you can find more information that will really guide you as you plan a community conversation. But I would like to share with you an example of a community conversation, and they're going to go over many of the things I talked about, but they're going to go over them in the context of a community conversation and some of the people and families and students that were part of these community conversations. So sit back and enjoy.
Conversation efforts that Tennessee Works has hosted across the state has impacted the employment of young people with disabilities by bringing together businesses and families and people with disabilities at that local level so they can work out issues in their own communities and have success at that level.
The community conversation was an amazing experience to see people gather from all different walks of life, people that are employers, people that are teachers, people that are parents, people that do all kinds of different things who might not have otherwise been aware of those individuals with disabilities in the community who need employment.
Community conversations are a great way to bring together diverse community members to discuss an issue close to home. We're going to walk you through the different steps of a community conversation so you can host your own. 1. Form a team. Get together the movers and shakers in your community. By creating a planning team of diverse stakeholders, you'll be able to bring multiple perspectives to planning your event. 2. Recruit people to show up. Make sure to reach out to employers, faith organizations, civic leaders, self-advocates, family members, and don't forget the neighbor that isn't typically involved in events about disability. Everyone's voice matters. 3. Register at the table. Make sure you keep track of who shows up. You can use colored stickers to identify how people are involved in the community. 4.
Enjoy tasty snacks.
Give people time to settle in and meet each other. You can cater anything from sweet desserts and coffee to full dinners. 5. Set the stage. This could be a self-advocate, employer, or other community member who can share their employment experience and show the community what's at stake with these conversations. 6. Lay out the game plan. People want to know what's about to happen. Give a brief outline of the format and the questions you'll ask. 7. Let the conversations begin. Each table should have a facilitator to guide the conversation and a note taker to capture all the ideas that people are sharing.
Examples and getting away from the statistical end of it.
And now you're helping all of the employees that are going to be around that new employee because they're going to be teaching as they are learning.
You get to go from one table to another table, and you get that same question almost twice. And so you get to refine what you think the second go around, and then you build on those ideas. So you get the better ideas at the end of the conversation. And there's a table reporter, a table host at each table that it writes down everything everybody says. And when you do make a suggestion and it's written down, you know that someone's going to read that suggestion, someone's going to pay attention to that later.
Because I know when I was at the high school.
8. Report out. Share your table's best ideas with the room. 9. Don't forget to follow up. Compile your findings and make sure to keep in contact with your participants. Let them know the ideas that they came up with at the conversation and what action you're going to take going forward. 10. Don't forget to have fun. Community conversations are a great way to make a change in your community.
I was really interested in what other people had to say and what other people had to say about my ideas.
My last table group, I sat with an employer, and just to be able to hear what does that look like for him, what can I do to improve those relationships or even start the conversation. And so that's one takeaway I had. He's like, get in there with those small businesses. You know, I think you guys are out at the larger corporations, but get with those small businesses and really reach out.
I came tonight because I wanted to learn how to better integrate disabled people into the workforce. I learned that it would be good to use public relations, TV, radio to advertise and show the community, and it will help the community involve everyone and treat them as equal.
You've got to learn how to embrace things that are different. We're never going to learn anything different, or we're never going to change any mindsets if we don't start thinking out of the box and coming to something new and really starting to learn to embrace it and grasp it.
So you got to see in action and hear the steps again of what a community conversation is, and seeing the participants discuss the power of a community conversation in action. If you are working with the Transition Improvement Grant on requirements for the Transition Readiness Grant, intensive transition training, or receiving a stipend from TIG, your district will be asked to provide documentation on your work. This is a snapshot of the requirement tabs you will choose from. It is on the Wisconsin Transition Improvement Plan website, www.witip.org. Contact your TIG regional coordinator if you need instruction on reporting requirements, or visit One Stop Reporting online learning module for more information. If you want more information, resources, connections to other people around the state who have had community conversations around employment, you can contact any of these regional TIG coordinators. I thank you for your time, and I thank you for all that you do for the students in Wisconsin as they transition into their post-secondary goals.